is marriage between one man and one woman?
All right, and Jonathan, as we come back in and deal with this, I just want to read one more paragraph from this article in Newsweek, and then we do have a call waiting on the line.
Paul was tough on homosexuality, though recently progressive scholars have argued that his condemnation of men who were inflamed with lust for one another, which he calls a perversion, is really a critique of the worst kind of wickedness, self-delusion, violence, promiscuity, and debauchery. In his book, The Arrogance of Nations, the scholar Neil Elliott argues that Paul is referring in this famous passage to the depravity of Roman emperors, the craven habits of Nero and Caligula, a reference to his audience would have grasped instantly. Paul is not talking about what we call homosexuality at all, Elliott says. He's talking about a certain group of people who have done everything in this list, where we're not dealing with anything like gay love or gay marriage. We're talking about reality, really violent people who meet their end and are judged by God. In any case, one might add, Paul argued more strenuously against divorce, and at least half of the Christians in America disregard that teaching.
Again, minimizing the words that are speaking against homosexual behavior. And again, it's not against homosexual orientation. It's against homosexual behavior. And just before we take this next call, Jonathan, one of the things in my mind, to me, according to scriptures, any sexual relationship outside of a God-sanctioned marriage is improper. And I'm not going to sit here and put them in orders, which is the most improper and which is the least. To me, they all fit into the same category. And so this is not centering on homosexuality as the bane of the world or something like that. It is just part of a much bigger problem. That's the way I see it. Let's take this call.
Welcome to Christian Questions. This is Jonathan and Rick. Who are we speaking with?
Larry.
Good morning, Larry. How you doing?
Good morning, everyone. You know, I think you brought up a great point, Rick. How do we sanction one sexual behavior and not all of them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why should we exclude bestiality or incest or polygamy or any of them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't believe that God would condemn a condition of birth. So, you know, it's not a condition of birth. There may be a predisposition, but many people are predisposed to commit adultery. But you know what? Most of them don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what this really is, a great error here, is that this challenges the divinity of God. Because they're saying God is wrong, because we want to do what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have government leaders that are saying they oppose same-sex marriage, but they support civil unions. What they're saying when they support a civil union is they support homosexual and lesbian behaviors. And, you know, and then they'll call themselves Christians or Orthodox Jews or whatever. I think it's a great error, but unfortunately, we're dealing with a pagan culture, which is becoming more and more pagan, and they create the God of their own making.
Mm-hmm.
Not on God's terms and conditions, but on theirs. They reject the Scriptures. They want to throw out the Scriptures. And or they'll tell you that's not what it means. Well, that's what it says.
Yeah.
And again, it's not because we hate homosexuals or lesbians. I certainly don't. I don't hate people that do abortions. I hate what they do. And I want them converted, not condemned. Christ paid a big price for them.
Right.
For all of us. All our my sins are certainly at Calvary. But where did Jesus do his first recorded public miracle? At a wedding. It's very, very clear what a marriage is. A woman will cling to her husband, a husband will cling to his wife, and they will become one. Now, if people want to reject that, they can do that in a free society. I don't agree with them, and it's not because I'm a homophobe or I'm trying to bash anyone. That's the way it is. I can't tell God he's wrong. He's God. It's not a democracy. He didn't ask me to vote on it.
Right.
That's my 2.5 cents, and I thank you for letting me vent.
Thank you, Larry. We appreciate it so much.
Take care.
I think a point well stated. And I think that's what we're trying to get to from all of the perspective. And there are many, many Christians that, take the other point of view and say, well, no, God's not condemning that. Okay, fine. But find how it says it in the Scriptures. Larry's point is well taken. This is not a democracy when it comes to God. When God says something, we ought to be following it if we claim to be followers of God. I think you can't be manipulated by how you feel. We must be driven by what we see as direction. That's the key. It's not how you feel. Well, I don't feel like taking a left here. I really would rather go right because it looks like a nicer road. But if God says you need to take a left, you should take a left. That's the difficulty here. And you look, this is not easy. It's certainly not easy. And for those who are on the, Randall, this doesn't reduce my respect for him, not one iota. I understand his perspective, appreciate his perspective. I just disagree with it. But we can go on and still be the same as we were. And next week when he calls, we'll be exactly the same as we always have been. And we'll look forward to what he's got to say. Let's read Romans 1:20-27, and then we'll go to the next call.
For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened.